The hot soup exploded across my face like a slap. Beef broth dripping from my hair onto the pristine white tablecloth at Mom's birthday party. My brother Marcus slammed down the empty bowl and growled, "You have exactly 15 minutes to get out of this family." Mom and Dad just stared at their plates. My younger sister Brittany actually clapped like this was the finale of her favorite reality show. I calmly wiped my eyes, reached into my bag, and pulled out a thick legal folder. The sound it made hitting that table silenced the entire room. I looked my brother dead in the eyes and said in a voice cold as winter, "Fine. 15 minutes from now, everything you own disappears. You won't believe what happened next." Before we continue, please hit that subscribe button if your family ever turned on you. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This story gets so much worse, and you don't want to miss a single detail. My name is Victoria Chen. I'm 31 years old, and I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon here in Chicago. But this story starts way back in Charleston, South Carolina, in the thick humid air of the low country where I grew up. Our family lived in this old weathered house right on the banks of the Ashley River. The place had been creaking since the 80s. Paint peeling off the siding. The wraparound porch sagging under the weight of too many hurricane seasons and summer storms. My father, Robert Chen, worked brutal hours as a construction engineer. He'd come home every night covered in dust, barely saying 2 words before collapsing in his recliner. My mother, Margaret Chen, taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. She always smelled like chalk and that particular aroma of cafeteria pizza that never quite leaves a teacher's clothes. We weren't rich. We weren't poor. We were just barely making it, like so many families in the area. Then there was my brother Marcus. He came along when I was 4 years old, and from the moment he entered this world, everything shifted. Marcus became the center of the entire universe. Our parents scraped together every spare dollar for his private school tuition while I rode the public bus with a peanut butter sandwich in a paper bag. They worked overtime to buy him new sneakers every single season. When he turned 10, they surprised him with a used dirt bike. Meanwhile, I was wearing hand-me-downs from our neighbor's daughter. Mom would beam with pride when Marcus brought home a B-, saying things like, "He's just finding his way, he's got so much potential." Dad would slap him on the back for every little league hit, even the foul balls that didn't count. It didn't matter what Marcus did. He was golden. He was perfect. He was the son they always wanted. 6 years after Marcus, my baby sister Brittany arrived, and that sealed the deal on favoritism becoming family policy. By the time Brittany hit kindergarten, the rules had completely transformed. She attended the fancy elementary school across town, the kind with uniforms and actual Latin classes. Mom drove her there every single morning, packing these elaborate organic lunches in cute little containers. I was still catching that public bus with my sad sandwich. Brittany's dance recitals got front row seats for the whole family. Flowers, photos, the works. My science fair wins, the ones where I actually took first place in the regional competition, earned maybe a quick nod from Dad before he turned back to whatever game was on television. The disparity was so obvious it hurt. But I learned early on that complaining got you nowhere. So I just worked harder, studied longer, pushed myself further. Money from Marcus flowed like that river outside our door. Guitar lessons he never practiced. Summer camps he complained about. Even a part-time job at Dad's construction firm that was basically just him hanging around the office playing on his phone. When Marcus turned 16, a shiny red pickup truck appeared in our driveway. Dad had gotten a bonus from some big project, and he used every penny of it to buy Marcus that truck. I remember standing at the window watching Marcus drive away, music blasting, not a care in the world. Brittany hit 18 and got a sleek white sedan, keys handed over at her graduation party complete with balloons and a cake shaped like a college diploma. I watched from the sidelines, saving every single paycheck from my hospital shifts to pay down my student loans that my parents refused to help with. I put myself through college. I put myself through medical school. Every dollar came from my own pocket, my own sweat, my own sleepless nights working double shifts. Now let me tell you about the one person in this family who actually saw me. My grandfather, Henry Chen. He lived about 20 minutes away in this modest brick ranch house filled to the ceiling with old medical journals and pill bottles from his days in pharmaceuticals. Grandpa Henry had built a small company back in the 70s, supplying heart medications to local clinics across South Carolina. He eventually sold that company for a decent profit and retired comfortably, but his mind stayed sharp as a scalpel. Here's the thing about Grandpa Henry. Dad barely visited him. Maybe twice a year, always rushing through with excuses about work deadlines and project timelines. Mom would send birthday cards but conveniently skip the actual birthday celebrations, claiming she had grading to do or some school event she couldn't miss. Marcus just ignored Grandpa completely. He'd get invitations to Sunday dinners and blow them off to hang out with his friends. He'd text back saying he was too busy even when Grandpa called him personally. The disrespect was staggering. Brittany was somehow even worse. She'd promised to stop by after cheer practice, then flake with stories about study groups or emergency mall trips with her friends. She'd post photos on social media at the movies or the beach, having apparently forgotten she was supposed to visit her grandfather who was aging and alone. Grandpa Henry never complained out loud. He wasn't that kind of man. But I saw it in his eyes every time another Sunday passed without a visitor. Every time the phone went unanswered. Every time a promise got broken. The disappointment cut deep, and I couldn't stand watching it happen. So, I made the effort. Every single month, no matter how insane my residency schedule got, I'd either fly down from Chicago or make that brutal 12-hour drive straight through the night. We'd sit on his back patio sipping sweet tea while he told me stories about early drug trials and patients he'd helped indirectly through his medication supply business. He'd quiz me on anatomy and surgical procedures, nodding with approval at my answers. "You've got the fire, Victoria," he'd say quietly during those visits. "You've got what it takes. The others, they're just passing through life. But you're actually living it." I used to brush those comments off as old man talk, but looking back, those words meant everything. Grandpa Henry saw something in me that my own parents refused to acknowledge. He saw my dedication, my intelligence, my worth. One weekend when I was 25 years old, Grandpa Henry pulled me aside during one of my visits. We were in his study, surrounded by those old medical journals and the faint smell of leather and pipe tobacco. He asked me to sit down, and his expression was more serious than I'd ever seen it. "Victoria," he said, "I need to talk to you about something important. I'm getting my affairs in order, and I want you to understand what I'm planning." I told him we didn't need to talk about that kind of thing. He was healthy. He had years ahead of him. But he shook his head and pulled out this leather-bound folder from his desk drawer. "Listen to me carefully," he said. "I've worked my whole life to build something meaningful. That pharmaceutical company, the investments, the properties, all of it represents decades of work. And I'll be damned if it gets wasted on people who couldn't be bothered to visit me once a month." He explained that he'd already revised his will. Everything, and I mean everything, was going to me. The company shares, the trust fund, the properties, every single asset he owned. He'd chosen me as the sole beneficiary because I was the only one who treated him like family instead of like an obligation or an ATM machine. "But Grandpa," I protested, "that's going to cause problems with Mom and Dad. With Marcus and Brittany, they're going to lose their minds." "Good," he said firmly. "Let them. Maybe it'll teach them something about respect and loyalty. Maybe it won't. Either way, you've earned this, Victoria. You're the only one who deserves it." He made me promise to use the inheritance wisely, to honor his legacy, to maybe help other young people who were fighting to make something of themselves despite coming from difficult circumstances. I promised him I would, though at the time I didn't really believe it would happen. Grandpa Henry seemed invincible to me. But 2 years later, just after my 27th birthday, I got the call. Grandpa Henry had passed away quietly in his sleep. Heart failure. Quick and painless, according to the doctors. I flew down to Charleston immediately, my heart shattered into a million pieces. The funeral was small. I was there early, stayed late, helped arrange every detail. I gave the eulogy through tears, talking about the man who believed in me when nobody else did. You know who else showed up? Dad, for about 30 minutes before leaving for a work call. Mom, who spent the entire service on her phone texting. Marcus rolled in 45 minutes late wearing jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt. Brittany didn't even bother showing up at all. She posted an Instagram story from brunch with friends that same day, mimosa in hand, not a care in the world. The will reading happened 3 days later in the office of Grandpa Henry's attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Holmes who'd known our family for years. Everyone gathered in that conference room. Mom and Dad looking uncomfortable. Marcus sprawled in his chair like he owned the place. Brittany checking her phone every 30 seconds. Patricia opened the folder and started reading. Within 2 minutes, the room went dead silent. Everything went to me. The pharmaceutical company shares worth approximately $3.2 million. The trust fund containing another $1.8 million. The rental properties scattered across Charleston. The investment portfolios. All of it. Every single penny. Marcus shot out of his chair so fast he knocked it over. His face went bright red. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. "This is garbage. This has to be a mistake." Patricia calmly explained there was no mistake. Grandpa Henry had revised his will 18 months before his death with full mental competency, witnessed and notarized according to South Carolina law. She had the documentation right there. Mom started crying, not from grief but from shock and anger. She kept saying, "How could he do this to us? How could he do this to his own family?" Dad just sat there stone-faced, but I could see the fury building behind his eyes. Brittany threw an actual tantrum. She stood up screaming that this wasn't fair, that I must have manipulated Grandpa Henry, that I probably brainwashed a senile old man into changing his will. I sat there calmly and let them rage. Let them scream. Let them show their true colors in front of the attorney who was documenting every word. When they finally exhausted themselves, I spoke for the first time. "Grandpa Henry made his choice based on who actually treated him like family," I said quietly. "I was the only one who visited him, the only one who called, the only one who cared whether he lived or died. You all had years to change that, and you chose not to. This is the consequence of your own actions." Marcus got right in my face, close enough that I could smell the alcohol on his breath. "You're going to fix this," he hissed. "You're going to share that money, or I swear to God, Victoria, I will make your life a living hell." I stood up, gathered my copy of the will, and walked out without another word. Behind me, I could hear Mom sobbing and Dad yelling at Patricia about contesting the will. I knew they'd try. I knew this was just the beginning, and I was ready for all of it. Over the next few months, things got ugly. Real ugly. My parents hired a lawyer to contest the will, claiming undue influence and diminished mental capacity. Their attorney argued that I'd manipulated a lonely old man into cutting out his entire family. They painted me as this cold, calculated villain who'd taken advantage of Grandpa Henry's isolation. The case dragged on for 8 months. Depositions, document reviews, medical records proving Grandpa Henry was completely sound of mind, phone records showing my regular calls versus their non-existent ones, visitor logs from his community showing I was the only family member who consistently showed up. The judge threw out their case completely. Not only did he uphold the will, but he ordered my parents to pay court costs and attorney fees. That hit them hard financially. They'd already spent thousands on their lawyer, and now they owed thousands more. But Marcus, oh Marcus, took it to another level entirely. See, with his newfound financial stress from the legal bills and zero inheritance to fall back on, he made some catastrophically stupid decisions. He started a wellness business called Health Track LLC, supposedly focused on corporate wellness programs and fitness consulting. Sounded legitimate on paper. In reality, it was a disaster wrapped in fraud. Marcus had zero business experience and even less common sense. He got a massive business loan using inflated projections and outright lies on his application. He claimed to have contracts with major corporations that didn't exist. He fabricated revenue numbers. He even forged letters of recommendation from business leaders he'd never met. The loan money, about $800,000, went into his account, and Marcus went absolutely wild. He bought himself a luxury condo in a trendy Charleston neighborhood. A brand new sports car, designer clothes, expensive watches. He was living like a millionaire on borrowed money while his so-called business existed only on paper. I knew all of this because I still had connections in Charleston. Old colleagues, former classmates who worked in banking and real estate. They'd tell me stories about seeing Marcus at expensive restaurants, dropping thousands on bottles of champagne, bragging about his successful business empire. It was all smoke and mirrors, and the walls were about to come crashing down. Meanwhile, Brittany was burning through money just as fast in her own way. She'd enrolled in an expensive private college studying, and I'm not making this up, social media marketing and influencer culture. Her tuition was $45,000 a year. Mom and Dad were covering it by taking out Parent Plus loans they absolutely could not afford, but they did it anyway because Brittany was their precious baby who deserved everything. Brittany spent more time taking Instagram photos than actually studying. Her feed was full of designer outfits, exotic trips funded by credit cards, and inspirational quotes about living your best life. She had zero concept of financial reality or what any of this was costing her parents. I watched all of this from Chicago, building my career, living modestly despite having millions in assets. I drove a sensible used car. I lived in a nice but not extravagant condo. I put in 80-hour weeks at the hospital, perfecting my surgical skills, saving lives. The money from Grandpa Henry sat mostly untouched in investment accounts, growing steadily. I took a small salary from the pharmaceutical company shares and lived off my surgeon income for everything else. I was waiting, watching, letting them dig their own graves. Then came Mom's birthday party, her 53rd. She wanted to do this big celebration at my parents' house in Charleston, inviting extended family and friends. Despite everything that had happened, despite the lawsuit and the ugliness, she called me personally and asked me to come. Victoria, she said on the phone, I know things have been difficult, but you're still my daughter. It would mean the world to me if you'd be there. Can we please just have one nice family gathering? Something in her voice made me agree. Maybe it was leftover love for the mother who used to read me bedtime stories before Marcus was born. Maybe it was morbid curiosity. Maybe I already knew what was going to happen and wanted to be there to see it. Whatever the reason, I said yes. I booked a flight to Charleston. The party was set up in their backyard. String lights hanging from the trees. Tables covered in white cloth. Catered food that I knew they couldn't actually afford. Mom wore a new dress. Dad wore a forced smile. Marcus showed up in designer everything, acting like he owned the world. Brittany arrived late, immediately started taking selfies, complained about the lighting. I arrived quietly, dressed simply, carrying that legal folder in my bag. Nobody knew what was inside except me. I greeted Mom politely, hugged Dad briefly, nodded at Marcus and Brittany without warmth. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, but everyone was playing nice for Mom's sake. We sat down for dinner around 7:30. The meal was actually pretty good. Grilled shrimp, fresh salad, bread still warm from the oven. Normal conversation flowed around the table. Weather, traffic, Mom's students from school. Surface level stuff. Nothing real, nothing honest. Then Marcus, 3 glasses of wine deep, decided to start talking about his business. He went on and on about these major contracts he was closing, the expansion plans, how Health Track LLC was going to revolutionize corporate wellness, how he was going to be a millionaire by 35. The lies poured out of his mouth like water, and our parents ate it up. They were so proud, so impressed, so completely clueless about the reality. I sat there quietly, barely touching my food, just listening, just waiting. That's when Brittany decided to chime in. She started talking about her influencer career, how she was building her brand, how companies were starting to reach out for sponsorships. More lies, more delusions. Our parents nodded along enthusiastically. Then Brittany turned to me with this fake sweet smile. So Victoria, she said, still working those crazy hospital hours? Must be exhausting. Don't you ever want to do something more, I don't know, fulfilling? Something with more life balance? The condescension dripped from every word. Like my career saving actual human lives was somehow less impressive than her Instagram feed. I do find my work quite fulfilling, I replied calmly. There's something meaningful about repairing hearts for a living. Marcus snorted into his wine glass. Yeah, well, some of us are building empires, not just fixing problems. Real entrepreneurs create value, not just maintain it. That's when I saw it. That same dismissive look they'd given me my entire childhood. That same assumption that I was somehow less than them. Less important, less successful, less worthy of respect. And something inside me snapped. Not with anger, but with absolute clarity. I reached into my bag under the table, pulled out the legal folder, and set it in front of me. I didn't open it yet. I just let it sit there, this thick manila folder covered in law firm labels and official stamps. Marcus noticed first. His eyes locked on that folder. What's that? He asked, trying to sound casual but failing. This is reality, I said quietly. This is the consequences of every choice you've all made over the past 2 years. Mom laughed nervously. Victoria, sweetie, let's not do this now. It's my birthday. She started talking about her influencer career, how she was building her brand, how companies were starting to reach out for sponsorships. More lies. More delusions. Our parents nodded along enthusiastically. Then Brittany turned to me with this fake sweet smile. So Victoria, she said, still working those crazy hospital hours? Must be exhausting. Can we please just have a nice evening? That's when Marcus made his fatal mistake. He'd been drinking steadily all night, his anger and resentment bubbling just under the surface. He stood up, grabbed the bowl of French onion soup sitting in front of him, and before anyone could react, he dumped the entire thing over my head. The hot liquid hit like a physical assault. Broth burning my scalp. Onions sliding down my face. Bread chunks catching in my hair. Brittany actually clapped her hands together like this was the climax of some TV drama she'd been waiting for. And that's when I knew. That's when I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the right decision. These people weren't family. They were strangers who happened to share my DNA. They were users who only valued you for what you could give them. I calmly wiped soup from my eyes with my napkin. I opened the legal folder with hands that didn't shake even a little bit. I pulled out the first document and dropped it on the table with a heavy thud that silenced even Brittany's excited whispers. Fine, I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. 15 minutes from now, everything you own disappears. I looked at Marcus first. His face was still red with rage and wine. His expensive shirt. His designer watch. His whole fraudulent life. Packet 1, I said, sliding the document toward him. IRS audit notice for HealthTrack LLC. They're investigating you for tax fraud. $680,000 in deducted marketing expenses with 0 invoices to back them up. $420,000 in equipment leases for assets that were never actually delivered. The civil penalty is 75% of the fraud amount. The criminal referral is pending. Marcus's face went from red to white in about 3 seconds. He grabbed the document, hands shaking, staring at the official IRS letterhead. Where did you get this? He whispered. Your bankruptcy lawyer forwarded it to me when I made an inquiry about liens on your properties, I explained calmly. It's public record now. The whole thing is public record. He ripped open the envelope, paper tearing under his fingers. He tried to speak but nothing came out except stammering denials. They can't prove anything, he finally managed to say. They already did, I replied. It's all documented. I pulled out packet 2. A single page from Grandpa Henry's trust, with yellow highlighter over a specific clause that I'd known was there for 2 years but never mentioned. Clause 7b, I read aloud. In the event any beneficiary, heir, or claimant initiates litigation, contesting the validity or distribution of this trust, such party shall forfeit all rights to any benefit herein and be liable for opposing legal fees. I looked at Mom and Dad. Their faces had gone pale. Grandpa Henry added this clause 3 months after his original will, I continued. Right after Marcus skipped that Sunday dinner for the 3rd month in a row. Right after Brittany forgot his birthday completely. The attorney mailed me the update because I was already listed as sole beneficiary. It's ironclad. You swed. You lost. And now you owe my legal fees on top of your own. Mom started crying, but these weren't tears of sadness. These were tears of rage and humiliation. This is cruel, she choked out. This is family. No, I said flatly. This is consequence. This is what happens when you treat people like they're disposable. But I wasn't done. I pulled out packet 3. 8 pages of documents with a bank letterhead. Transfer of promissory note, I announced. $800,000 from First Coastal Bank to Victoria Chen, MD. I bought Marcus's business loan 6 months ago. The bank was happy to sell it at a discount since you'd already defaulted twice. I now own your debt. Marcus made a strangled sound. He grabbed for the papers, but his hands were shaking too hard to hold them. Page 5, I continued, flipping through the documents for him. Acceleration clause triggered. Page 7, foreclosure timeline. The condo goes to auction Monday. The car gets repossessed Tuesday. Everything you bought with that loan money becomes mine by Friday. That's when Marcus completely lost it. He screamed, an incoherent sound of pure rage, and lunged toward me across the table. Dad had to grab him and hold him back while Marcus thrashed and shouted threats. You can't do this, he kept screaming. You can't do this. I'll kill you. I swear I'll kill you. I stood up calmly, gathering my documents. Behind me, I heard sirens. I'd called the police 15 minutes before arriving at the party, filing a report about threats I'd received from Marcus. I'd documented everything. Recorded phone calls. Saved text messages. Built a case. 2 officers appeared at the gate, their uniforms sharp under the string lights. They'd been waiting around the corner for my signal. Welfare check, the sergeant announced. We received a report of threats and potential violence at this address. I gestured to my soup-covered hair and clothes. Then I pointed to Marcus, who was still being restrained by Dad, his face purple with rage. All the evidence you need is right here, I said calmly. The officers took statements. They examined the scene. They noted Marcus's threats in their report. They noted that I was the victim of assault, covered in food, while Marcus stood there unharmed and aggressive. Last warning, the sergeant said to Marcus. You assault anyone, you make any more threats, you go straight to jail. Understand? Marcus just glared at me with pure hatred in his eyes. I turned to Brittany, who'd been silent this whole time, her phone forgotten in her lap. As for you, I said, your college tuition is gone. Mom and Dad defaulted on those Parent Plus loans 3 weeks ago. The school already sent the notice. You're withdrawn effective end of semester. No degree. No credentials. Just debt. Brittany's mouth fell open. She looked at Mom and Dad, who couldn't meet her eyes. That Instagram career you're building? I continued. Hope it works out. Because you're going to need actual income soon. The coffee shop downtown is hiring. Minimum wage plus tips. I'd apply fast before the positions fill up. I picked up my bag, now empty of all those carefully prepared documents. I'd spent months gathering evidence. Months planning. Months making sure every move was legal, documented, and irreversible. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. This was consequences finally catching up to people who thought they were untouchable. Mom tried one last desperate plea as I walked toward the gate. "Victoria, please," she sobbed. "We're family. You can't just abandon your family." I stopped and turned back one final time. The backyard was a disaster. Overturned chairs. Spilled wine. Soup stains on the white tablecloth. Officers standing guard. Marcus being held back by Dad. Brittany crying. Guests who'd witnessed everything standing in shocked silence. "You abandoned me 30 years ago," I said quietly. "The day Marcus was born and became the center of your universe. The day you decided I wasn't worth your time or attention or love. I was never family to you. I was the practice child. The mistake before you got it right. Well, congratulations. You finally got rid of me." I walked out through that gate, got in my rental car, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I could see the chaos I'd left behind. The destroyed party. The destroyed illusions. The destroyed fantasy that they were good people who deserved good things. The legal fallout took 4 more months to fully resolve. Marcus's condo went to auction. Sold for pennies on the dollar, not even enough to cover half of what he owed. He filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Most of his debts got discharged, but the IRS lien survived. That follows you forever. He ended up renting a studio apartment above a laundromat. The walls so thin you could hear the washing machines running at all hours. His fancy car got repossessed. His designer clothes got sold off. His entire fake empire crumbled to dust. Brittany dropped out of college mid-semester. Her credits frozen. Her transcript incomplete. She got that job at the coffee shop downtown. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she works doubles most weeks, serving tourists their overpriced lattes, her dreams of influencer fame long dead. The Instagram account still exists, but the posts are sporadic now. Reality has a way of crushing delusion. Mom and Dad sent a letter 3 months after the party. A handwritten apology on scented stationery, talking about how they'd been blind. How they'd made mistakes. How they hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive them someday. I read it once by my fireplace in Chicago. Then I fed it to the flames. Watched the paper curl and blacken. Watched their words turn to ash. I never sent a response. They didn't deserve one. The pharmaceutical company shares transferred to me seamlessly. $3.5 million in blue chip stock. Dividends rolling in quarterly. I was offered a seat on the board. I accepted and participate remotely. The profits fund expansions in cardiac research and medication access programs. The trust money, that $1.8 million, I liquidated completely. I used it to establish the Henry Chen Scholarship Fund. Full ride scholarships for low-income South Carolina pre-med students from the Low Country. Students who, like me, come from families that can't or won't support their dreams. Students who have to fight for every opportunity. The first recipients were 2 kids from Charleston Public Schools. Their essays were about passion for medicine and helping underserved communities. Reading their words was like reading my own story. I blocked every number. Marcus's attempts from burner phones. Brittany's disparate voicemails. My parents' landline. I changed the locks on my Chicago condo. Upgraded the security system. I deleted all the old contacts, the photos, the group chats. Clean slate. Fresh start. My colleagues at the hospital noticed the change in me. I stopped mentioning family during lunch breaks. My focus in the OR sharpened even further. My surgical outcomes improved. I was voted Attending of the Year. I published 2 papers in major journals. I started mentoring residents who reminded me of my younger self. Hungry. Driven. Fighting against systems that told them they weren't good enough. My best friend Sarah, another surgeon, toasted the scholarship fund launch over wine one evening. "Legacy secured," she said. "Your grandfather would be so proud." I saw Marcus once after that night. Pure chance at a gas station during a rare visit back to Charleston for a medical conference. He was pumping cheap fuel into a beat-up sedan that looked like it barely ran. Our eyes met across the pumps. He looked away first, climbed into his car and drove off without a word. The man who'd once driven a luxury pickup now couldn't meet my eyes. Brittany served me coffee at an airport kiosk. She didn't recognize me at first. her name tag slightly crooked on her coffee-stained apron. I ordered. She made it with mechanical efficiency. I paid cash. Left no tip. Boarded my flight without saying a single word. Let her figure it out later when she saw my credit card name on the receipt. Mom and Dad tried one more holiday card the following December. I returned it unopened with a stamp that said refused. They haven't tried again since. Here's what I learned through all of this. True family isn't about blood. It's not about DNA or last names or who gave birth to you. True family is about respect. About showing up. About valuing someone's presence in your life instead of taking it for granted. Grandpa Henry was my real family. The only one who ever truly saw me. Who believed in my potential. Who loved me not for what I could give him, but for who I actually was. Everything I did, every move I made, was to honor his memory and protect his legacy from people who would have squandered it on temporary pleasures and fake empires. Some people might think what I did was cold, heartless, cruel even. They'd say family should forgive family. That blood is thicker than water. That I should have been the bigger person and shared the inheritance. But those people don't understand what it's like to grow up invisible in your own home. To work twice as hard for half the recognition. To watch resources flow freely to siblings who never earned them while you fight for every scrap. They don't understand what it's like to be dumped on, literally and figuratively, and then be expected to smile and take it because that's what good daughters do. I chose differently. I chose to honor the one person who honored me. I chose to let consequences teach lessons that words never could. I chose to walk away from toxicity disguised as family obligations. And you know what? I sleep just fine at night. I wake up every morning in my Chicago condo. I drink my coffee in peace. I go to the hospital and repair hearts, literally giving people second chances at life. I fund scholarships that give kids second chances at education. I build a legacy that means something beyond just accumulating wealth. Meanwhile, Marcus sits in his studio above a laundromat. Brittany pours coffee for minimum wage. Mom and Dad live with the consequences of their choices, drowning in debt from loans they never should have taken. They made their beds. Now they get to lie in them. The funny thing is, I gave them chances. Years of chances. Every time they ignored Grandpa Henry was a chance to change. Every time they prioritized Marcus and Brittany over basic fairness was a chance to change. Every dismissive comment. Every rolled eye. Every assumption that I'd just take it and stay silent. All chances they threw away. So when people ask me if I have any regrets, I tell them the truth. My only regret is not doing it sooner. Not standing up for myself earlier. Not enforcing boundaries the first time they were crossed instead of the 100th. But everything happens in its own time. Grandpa Henry's death, as painful as it was, gave me the resources and the clarity to finally take action. To finally say enough. To finally demand the respect I'd always deserved but never received. That's the real story. Not a revenge tale, though I know that's how it sounds. It's a story about self-respect. About knowing your worth even when the people closest to you refuse to see it. About building something meaningful with the opportunities you're given instead of squandering them on ego and appearance. If you're watching this and you relate to any part of my story, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family or undervalued by people who should love you unconditionally, I want you to hear this. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your future just because they share your past. Set your boundaries. Enforce your standards. Walk away from people who drain you, even if they're blood relatives. Build the life you deserve with people who actually value you. And never, ever apologize for demanding basic respect and decency. That folder I dropped on the table wasn't just documents. It was years of documentation. Years of evidence. Years of careful planning. Because when you finally decide to stand up for yourself against people who've spent a lifetime tearing you down, you better make sure you do it right. You better make sure it sticks. And it did stick. The last I heard, Marcus is working construction. Manual labor. The same job our dad did, except without the respect Dad earned through years of honest work. Marcus complains about the physical toll. About the early mornings. About the paycheck-to-paycheck existence. He's experiencing firsthand what it's like to actually work for your survival instead of having it handed to you. Brittany is still at that coffee shop 3 years later. She posts occasionally on social media, but the glamorous life she used to project is long gone. Now it's tired selfies at the end of double shifts. Complaints about difficult customers. The reality of living without a safety net or a backup plan. Mom had to go back to work full-time even though she'd planned to retire early. The debt is crushing. The house they once owned outright now has liens against it. They're one emergency away from financial disaster at all times. Dad's health is declining from the stress. He had a minor heart attack last year. Ironic, considering my specialty. None of them have ever, not once, sent a genuine apology. Not one that acknowledged what they actually did wrong. Not one that showed real understanding of how their favoritism damaged me. Not one that demonstrated actual change. They're sorry they got caught. Sorry they lost the inheritance. Sorry their golden children turned out to be failures. But they're not sorry for how they treated me. And that tells me everything I need to know. So I keep living my life. I keep operating. I keep teaching. I keep funding those scholarships. Every year, I meet the new recipients. Bright kids with fire in their eyes and determination in their hearts. Kids who remind me of myself at that age. Kids who deserve a chance that nobody's willing to give them. I shake their hands and tell them about Grandpa Henry. About his belief in education and opportunity. About his conviction that success should be earned through effort, not inheritance. And every time I do that, every time I see one of those kids graduate medical school debt-free and ready to serve their communities, I know I made the right choice. I know Grandpa Henry would be proud. I know that his legacy lives on in ways that actually matter, not in spoiled grandchildren who never appreciated what they had. That's the story. That's the whole truth. From the soup incident to the scholarship fund. From the favoritism to the fallout. From the girl who was invisible to the woman who made sure she could never be ignored again. If your family has ever turned on you, if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own home, drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Tell me how you survived. Tell me how you built something better. Because we all deserve better than what we're sometimes given. We all deserve to be seen and valued for who we actually are. And remember, blood might be thicker than water, but chosen family is thicker than both. Build your circle carefully. Invest your energy wisely. And never, ever let anyone make you feel small just because they refuse to see how big you really are. That's all I've got for today. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Hit that subscribe button. Share this story if it resonated with you. And remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well, doing meaningful work, and refusing to carry other people's dysfunction into your future. I'm Victoria Chen, and this was my story. The whole messy, complicated, ultimately liberating truth. Thanks for watching.